welcome into Clutch Talk Sports Radio Live. Now here's your host, Kevin Gray.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Clutch Talk Sports Radio Live on the Sports Radio America Network, presented by Media MPC. Go to www.mediampc.com and download the app on your iOS and Android device and get your mobile press conference on with Media MPC. If you don't catch anything live with us, make sure you download and subscribe to our free podcast available on Apple Podcasts and anywhere you get your podcast for free. Just search the word Clutch Talk Sports Radio. We are live on a Friday, live on YouTube. Go to youtube.com/Clutch Talk Sports Radio. You can see our show streaming live currently on YouTube, and you can follow us all over social media on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at CT Sports Radio. My producer, Memphis Vince, along with the ride with me today. If you want to get in on the conversation, the phone number is 888-444-0570. That's 888-444-0570. That is the Clutch Talk Sports Radio phone line if you want to get at me today during our show. Again, good afternoon to everyone joining us live today on Clutch Talk Sports Radio Live on the Sports Radio America Network. Memphis, how are you today this afternoon, sir?
I'm good, man. What about you, man?
It's Friday, so I'm feeling good. My wife's birthday is actually tomorrow, so happy early birthday to my wife. Give her a birthday shout out.
Word, yeah.
Over the radio, because I want to stay married, so I got to do these things.
Gotta stay married, man.
Yeah. So happy birthday to her. Going to be doing some traveling this weekend, but we'll be back on Monday, so don't worry. We'll be back on Monday, ready for another Monday show where hopefully, well, not necessarily hopefully, some of the conversation will have died down around this whole thing with Jay-Z and the NFL. I don't know if you heard, Memphis, but Jay-Z and the NFL are in business together, and a certain group of individuals aren't necessarily feeling that. So let's jump into it. So Jay-Z, Rock Nation, the NFL, Roger Goodell are in business together, billionaire to organizational billionaire. Jay-Z and Rock Nation to the NFL strike a deal this week to where they are part of the Imagine Change campaign in the NFL, part of the social justice initiative that the NFL has put together. And they've decided to bring in Jay-Z to partner with this initiative going forward. Jay-Z will have creative control. Jay-Z and Rock Nation will have creative control over performers and performances at NFL events going forward, including the Super Bowl starting in Miami, of course, this year in 2020, and the Super Bowl in Miami. So justice, social justice, music, Jay-Z, Rock Nation, the NFL doing business together. But there's one issue, a major issue that a lot of folks are having with this particular deal, and it stems around the very man who brought these issues to light in the first place, in Colin Kaepernick. Colin Kaepernick, of course, celebrating the 3-year anniversary earlier this week of him kneeling during a preseason game to bring awareness to social injustice, racial inequality, that kind of thing. So when it comes to Colin Kaepernick and this entire situation with Jay-Z, when it comes to the NFL and everything that's going on, let's take a whole broad perspective look at this. Look, Eric Reed, a former teammate of Colin Kaepernick with the San Francisco 49ers and currently Colin Kaepernick's best friend, has been very critical of what the NFL has tried to do, calling the NFL's move, social justice move, and deal with Jay-Z disingenuous, quote unquote. He had a series of tweets earlier this week criticizing the NFL for trying to create a disingenuous program that continues to keep out the one guy that brought these issues to light in Colin Kaepernick. And there's been a wide range of reaction to this entire situation. Now, you have to remember, Jay-Z is a business. Look, he's not a businessman. He's a businessman. So Jay-Z is going to do exactly what he feels like he is going to need to do for the good, not only necessarily for those around him, but for what's good for his pocket. Now, look, I'm going to reserve judgment when it comes to this. Here's why. It is very easy to react one way or another depending on how you feel about this issue. On the one hand, if you're looking at it from a NFL organization still blackballing Colin Kaepernick, but going into the business of social justice with Jay-Z, and then it looked like profiting off of what Colin Kaepernick attempted to do in bringing in social injustice, racial inequality, police brutality, and those issues to the forefront, and then the NFL ultimately capitalizing on it and making money off of it because of the attention that has been brought to it. I can understand your anger and frustration, especially when Colin Kaepernick is still not in the league and does not have a job. Now, Jay-Z and Roger Goodell had a press conference at Roc Nation's offices earlier this week, and someone posed a question to Jay-Z, and I think it was Charlamagne the God that actually posed a question to him and said, look, you know, one of the criticisms of this particular deal is that Colin Kaepernick is not in the NFL. What would you say to those that feel like you are turning your back on Colin Kaepernick, especially after you supported him, after you've told others not to perform at NFL events because of your support for Colin Kaepernick? Other folks like Cardi B and Rihanna not performing for the Super Bowl, not performing for NFL events in solidarity with Colin Kaepernick. Jay-Z, what would you say to those individuals? And Jay-Z said something to the effect of, well, we're past kneeling. Now, that is a very inflammatory statement for those who feel like Colin Kaepernick's position has now been put in vain because Jay-Z has usurped the entire movement by one failed swooped contract with the NFL as far as this social justice initiative is concerned, with partnering with Roc Nation and the NFL. And I understand that, because to systematically blackball the individual who brought these issues to light and then have someone who supported said player who brought these issues to light go into business with the very organization that has been criticized for potentially and most likely blackballing that particular player out of the NFL, the optics are really, really bad. That is the big overarching picture when you initially look at this, if you're on the side of Colin Kaepernick and trying to figure out why in the world would a guy and Jay-Z put himself in this position to, one, be criticized for making a move and partnering with the NFL while still trying to be in solidarity with Colin Kaepernick, and two, did he have a true conversation with Colin Kaepernick before engaging in this particular business with Colin Kaepernick's ultimate enemy, yet, yes,
Nope.
he settled with? So Jamel Hill goes into a little bit of conversation with that with a terrific, fantastic piece in The Atlantic. I encourage you to read it. And one of the things that she talked about was that Colin Kaepernick's folks did talk to Jay-Z prior to this deal, and apparently the conversation was, quote-unquote, not a good conversation. That's a little bit of a problem. Now, we go to the flip side of this. The other side being, well, look, Kevin, if you're Jay-Z, one of the other things that Jay-Z said is that we have to move past kneeling. We have to move into, quote-unquote, actionable items with respect to how we move forward with the protest that Colin Kaepernick started, the issues that he brought to light, and how do we move forward with that? Because once you get past the protesting part, there has to be action. This is what Jay-Z is trying to talk about in his deal with the NFL. So if you're on the side of Jay-Z, you are thinking about, well, how can Jay-Z affect change from within? Because once the issue has been brought to light, then what do you do with it going forward? Jay-Z is coming from the perspective of, I'm going to try and affect change. We think he's trying to affect change from within, because sometimes you've got to get inside to go change things for the better, especially if you've been critical of those same things on the outside looking in. So the only way sometimes to make change is to go with inside and go make the change themselves. So maybe that's...
Wait a minute. What? How is Jay-Z going to do that with concerts? I mean, he's not playing football.
So this is the part where other folks come in and talk about the idea, well, wait a minute, Jay-Z. The idea that you're going to be a face for the NFL ultimately can be construed as you usurping the voice of the very players that have brought these issues to light and still continue to deal with.
Right.
I'm talking about Eric Reed. I'm talking about Kenny Stills. I'm talking about other players who have continued with this movement after Colin Kaepernick has started. And now you have a black face partnering with the supposed enemy of a Eric Reed, of a Kenny Stills, of a Colin Kaepernick. And now the question is that Jay-Z is going to have to ultimately be ready for now, when the NFL does something crazy, when they do something that is not of particularly kosher ilk to anyone who sides with Colin Kaepernick or black players or things that have to do with black people, Jay-Z is going to have to answer for that. And I don't know if Jay-Z is ready for that particular responsibility. Look, I know Jay-Z has done plenty for the black community with respect to documentaries that he has started, the Free Meek Mill movement, other things. Jay-Z has been a mogul in business, in music, but more importantly, he's been a community and national activist when it comes to helping black and brown people. That is unquestioned. There is plenty of things to obviously that have been documented about that. So the question is, and moving forward, look, a lot of folks have been really reactionary to this based on what they feel for Colin Kaepernick, based on what they feel for JC, this whole cancel culture, all this stuff, right? Let's reserve judgment, because this is the thing, for me at least. Jay-Z has earned the right to have this be seen through with respect to his deal with the NFL. He's done way too much, too many positive things for too many organizations and too many things that are of record that have been positive for black and brown people in this country for us to, particularly who are of color, cancel Jay-Z. Now, from the NFL side of things, look, the NFL cares about one color, ultimately. That is the color green. And how they continue to make that green is up to Roger Goodell. Roger Goodell capitalized on an opportunity, and he saw it. Look, I don't necessarily believe that the NFL cares that deeply about the issues of black and brown people. I think they care about how black and brown people put money in the pockets of NFL teams in all 32 cities that NFL teams reside in. That, to me, is very clear. So if there's an opportunity to marry the idea of money with a very powerful spending community, the black community is one of the most powerful spending communities in the entire world, especially obviously in this country. So the idea that Roger Goodell would capitalize on that does not fail me, I do not fail to understand that, because Roger Goodell has done one thing very well over the last 13, 14 years as commissioner of the NFL. He knows how to make money hand over fist. And the compromise that a lot of folks think Jay-Z may have made in this particular situation is effectively, and Jamal Hill talked about this in her piece also, effectively banishing Colin Kaepernick by making a deal with the NFL the way that Jay-Z made it. Again, if there is disagreement on both sides, it is completely understandable for both sides. My thing is, let's reserve judgment until we see ultimately how this moves forward, because how this moves forward is very, very interesting with respect to the parties that are involved. Roger Goodell, on the one hand, look, billionaires do a very good job, at least ones that have somewhat of a social conscience, to try and play both sides. Bomani Jones talked about some of this in his piece in The Undefeated. Billionaires are going to billionaire. Jay-Z's a billionaire. Roger Goodell runs a billion-dollar, multi-billion-dollar organization. He has his employers are billionaire owners. So look, there's a lot of elements that are going on, from race to class to social economic status. There's a lot of things going on here that have been brought into play by a simple striking of a pen to paper by Jay-Z and the NFL in doing this deal together. And a lot of folks have had a lot of reaction to it. My reaction to it is, look, let's step back for a second and really understand what's going on here. Jay-Z, I don't think, is trying to usurp Colin Kaepernick's movement. Is he capitalizing on it? Yes, that is very clear. He struck a deal with the NFL to make money for his business and his enterprise. That is what he did. Did the NFL capitalize on this? Yes, they did, because they're going to make money off of this and have performers and entertainers to come in and try to placate to certain sectors of fans in the NFL community. That part is clear. That should not be lost on you. If you don't understand that, then you're naive to really what's going on here. So look, business is good for both sides with respect to this. The question is, who should have talked to who prior to doing this? Should Jay-Z have called Colin Kaepernick and had a deeper conversation about this? Maybe. Why? Because Colin Kaepernick is the one that started this. Ultimately, if Jay-Z didn't necessarily have a conversation with him with respect to going into business with the NFL, then that's exactly what happened, and he may not necessarily have to be dealt with for it. only from the standpoint of Jay-Z's going to do exactly what he wants to do and how he wants to move forward with the way that the movement should move forward with the NFL. That's his business, and that's his right. And then how he chooses to handle that, that is what he's going to do and what he has done in making the deal with the NFL. But look, let's not get overly excited for those who think this is going to be some kind of inward taking over, some hostile takeover from within. The NFL is big, they're large, and they're powerful. And they know money when they see it and how to strike a deal when they know it's going to be good for business. Like Triple H says, it's what's best for business. The NFL feels like Jay-Z is what's best for business.
And Jay-Z feels like the NFL is what's best for business. But you know what's going to get lost in this whole thing? The actual message that Colin Kaepernick's talking about.
And that's the part where a lot of folks have a problem with it, is that the message ultimately could get lost here. Again, this is going to be about how the NFL players continue to respond to this. And again, once something happens crazy with the NFL, once something is taking place with the NFL, guess who's going to have to answer to it? It's going to have to be Jay-Z, because he's kind of turned himself now into this somewhat spokesperson for the NFL with respect to black and brown issues with social justice, police brutality, and racial inequality. So with that being said, Jay-Z better be ready for that responsibility. And if he is, we'll see how he handles it. If he's not, this thing could get ugly pretty quickly. But there's a lot to unpack with all of this. But the reaction has been vast, and it's been swift, and sometimes a little bit unreasonable. Mine is, look, step back, breathe for a second, understand what's going on here, and let's see how this thing moves forward, because who knows? This may work. It just depends on who it works for ultimately. And so far, we know that it's going to ultimately work for the pockets of both Jay-Z and the NFL. It's the Clutch Talk Sports Radio live show on the Sports Radio American Network, TuneIn Radio, and the TuneIn app. Coming up next, Jamal Murphy of the Undefeated is going to join us next to talk more about this partnership between Jay-Z and the NFL, what it means going forward. Next on Clutch Talk Sports Radio. We'll be right back.
Josephine seems to be coming along on the harpsichord.
Indeed. Did I tell you the Viscount got a new powdered wig and fainting couch?
Yes. Yes, you did. He put the couch in the parlor, if I'm not mistaken.
Indeed. Do you need a new powdered wig?
No, thank you. This one is... Unless you find it wanting in some way.
No, it's nice.
Thank you.
19th century Victorian life was boring. It only seems interesting because we watch literary adaptations and everything else on DirecTV. Get 45,000 shows and movies. Get DirecTV. More for your period drama thing. That's our thing.
Requires subscription to DirecTV's top-tier premier programming package. Other packages have fewer titles. Restrictions apply. Visit DirecTV.com.
Snickers presents 3 p.m. Brainstorms, world-changing ideas that unfortunately were conceived during the hungriest time of day. Like this one from June 1992.
I think we should redo all airport bathrooms.
Okay.
Let's start by replacing the toilet flushers with laser sensors. We got those?
Well, flushers have worked fine for 100 years, but lasers sound fun. What if they don't work?
How about we get a really tiny button that's impossible to find?
Ooh, you know what? Or we could startle people with sudden random flushes.
There you go.
Let's do both. What else?
Replace all the paper towels with fans?
Smart. Yes, that'll save energy.
No, because I think they should run 10 minutes longer than necessary and have the heat and force of a jet engine.
Fun. Love jets. What about sinks?
Let's give them non-functioning sensors.
Non-functioning, okay. But then no one can wash their hands.
And then they won't waste our hot air drying their hands. They'll just leave.
I love it. Change every airport bathroom on Earth.
Yeah.
Like that.
Thanks.
Don't brainstorm hungry. A reminder from your friends at Snickers.
Blood orange, you funky. Blood orange, you fresh. Blood orange, you zesty. Blood orange, you the best. The
You are listening to Sports Radio America. Sports, anytime, anywhere.
Welcome back in the Clutch Talk Sports Live. Go to www.media.com. Download the app on your iOS or Android device. Get your mobile Sports Radio phone 888-475-7888. Right now on YouTube. Coming up here in just a few moments, Jamal Murphy of the Undefeated is going to join us on our show to talk more about this Jay-Z deal with the National Football League. It's a interesting deal, obviously, that has taken place and made waves all across not only the NFL but throughout the entire sports world. And here on the line with us, I like to call him a friend of the program. He is a contributor for CBS, ESPN's Undefeated, and many other areas. His name is Jamal Murphy. Jamal, good afternoon to you, sir.
How are you? Great to be here.
Hey, doing well. Thank you so much for taking the time with us today on the Clutch Talk Sports Radio live show. Jamal is also the co-host, of course, of the Bill Rhoden on Sports podcast with legendary sports writer Bill Rhoden. Jamal, let's jump right in. Obviously, the NFL, Jay-Z are in business together. Let's start off with your initial reaction to this news with Jay-Z, the NFL doing business together, and how this has all transpired, obviously, in relation to Colin Kaepernick and his protest.
Yeah, I mean, my initial response was, surprise like everybody else. But when I thought about it and following Jay-Z throughout his career, he's a businessman, as he likes to say. He takes pride in being a billionaire. So he took this opportunity. He made a very good business decision with his move. Now, as far as the other aspects of the move, whether it be morality, whether it be social justice, I'm not sure that it fits into that. But business-wise, he made a business move. So it shouldn't be all that surprising.
Jay-Z going into the business with the NFL for the Imagine Change campaign and social justice initiative that the league has put forward. We're talking with Jamal Murphy, co-host of the Bill Rhoden on Sports podcast and contributor to ESPN's The Undefeated. When you look at this relationship between Colin Kaepernick and the NFL, Eric Reid, and the parties involved, and then you look at the deal between Jay-Z and the NFL, how do you think the voice of the players has been affected now that Jay-Z has stepped in as part of the NFL social justice initiative, and how he'll be in a particular role with the NFL moving forward?
Well, we're not sure because we don't know exactly what kind of role Jay-Z will be playing. When asked to describe what kind of role he'll play or what he expects, what kind of change he thinks he can make, he really wasn't specific with it. As far as the players, at the same time, the players haven't been all on one accord either. They haven't been 100% in lockstep with each other either. There have been different groups of players who've been taking different types of actions. So, to me, time will tell. And also, I don't see any kind of uniformity with the players, even with Jay-Z. I think maybe Jay-Z causes the players to be a little more accepting of the status quo in terms of what the NFL is expecting from them. Maybe different protests, the amount of protests will stop maybe because they feel like Jay-Z is co-signing what the owners are trying to do. So I think there'll be people will seem like they're more in lockstep, but I think it's not really. He doesn't really provide an answer to the current problems that exist in the NFL.
And again, we're talking with Jamal Murphy, co-host of the Bill Roten on Sports podcast and contributor to ESPN's The Undefeated, talking this Jay-Z NFL deal that was struck earlier this week between Roc Nation and the NFL. So with respect to that, obviously a lot of questions, more questions than answers so far with this particular deal. When you look at it from Colin Kaepernick's perspective, how would you feel if you were him based on what has happened to him over the last 3 years, not playing in the NFL, and Jay-Z making this deal seemingly kind of out of step with what has actually been going on with Colin Kaepernick in the NFL?
Well, if I'm him, I do feel betrayed to a certain extent. When you look at the situation, Jay-Z pretty much profited off of Colin Kaepernick's his whole situation. Jay-Z, not to say that Jay-Z intentionally used Colin Kaepernick, but he saw what was going on. He leveraged the situation. Colin Kaepernick, after 3 years, is still out of the league. He was blackballed by the league, and to me, that's still the major issue, that the NFL owners were allowed to blackball Colin Kaepernick, and by doing that, they've created a chilling effect, which will prevent other players from feeling that they can speak out on issues without being, banished by the league. So Jay-Z has helped that. So yeah, if I'm Colin Kaepernick, I definitely feel betrayed. The Colin Kaepernick issue is not dead. He's still in shape as he continues to put out there on social media and other places in terms of being in shape and ready to play. As we remember, when we last saw Colin Kaepernick, he was a 16-touchdown, four interception guy. So there's no question that he should be on somebody's roster in the NFL, and he's not. And the fact that he is not is a slap in the face of Kaepernick, of black people in general, and just society in general, because it's a stain on the NFL that will not go away until that's remedied. And Jay-Z's new position does not remedy that situation.
And again, we're talking with Jamal Murphy, co-host of the Bill Roten on Sports podcast and contributor to ESPN's Undefeated, talking Jay-Z's deal with the NFL with respect to Colin Kaepernick. And looking at it from the NFL side of things, Jamal, how do you think the perception of the NFL will either change or even potentially grow worse, obviously with the optics being that the NFL is looking to capitalize monetarily off of something that Colin Kaepernick started to bring issues to light using the NFL's platform?
Well, I think it was a shrewd move, not only for Jay-Z, as business-wise, as we discussed, but it's a shrewd move for the NFL because, by and large, most people will probably begin to forget about the Kaepernick issue and begin to forget about the major issues, racial issues that the NFL has, as Jay-Z allows them to incorporate more urban artists back into the fold and that sort of thing. So for the NFL, it was a great move, in order to try to get black entertainers back involved in the league, as they were shying away, including Jay-Z. Remember, Jay-Z was one of the people who said he would not perform at the Super Bowl. He was advising other performers not to perform at the Super Bowl. Now you bring Jay-Z back in the mix and you give him a piece of that NFL pie, which is a lot of money, as we all know. Now Jay-Z brings credibility, whether warranted or not. He brings credibility back to the NFL. So for the NFL, it was a no-brainer, and it was a great business decision for them.
And again, we're talking with Jamal Murphy, co-host of the Bill Roten on Sports podcast and contributor to ESPN's Undefeated, The Undefeated, right here on the Clutch Talk Sports Radio live show. My name is Kevin Ray, host of Clutch Talk Sports Radio on the Sports Radio America Network. So, Jamal, looking at this from a larger macro perspective, this brings obviously into focus now with the context of sports being involved, this idea of organizations using black culture to capitalize and make money off of something that we've seen in other industries, but the NFL really kind of taking it to a much larger level with respect to a particular issue that affects black and brown people deeply in this country. What would you say to that, and looking at it from that particular perspective on how this is a much larger issue that now the NFL in sports has kind of put itself into this space now?
Well, we know that black people are responsible for a lot of the culture dynamic in the United States. We make up a lot of the money making power out there in the United States and in the world. So it's not surprising that the NFL would go after that. It's just surprising that Jay-Z himself would agree to be a part of that, considering all he's done and all he's said in the past in terms of being anti what the NFL had been exhibiting in the past. So, I mean, we've seen this before many times. In other aspects of life, there's been issues where black people are treated unfairly, and the powers that be will look to a respected person in the black community and have that person, as much as they can, sort of co-sign what that organization is trying to do, and they've done that here, and it's really no surprise. I think it's important that black people in general and the country in general keep their eyes on the prize. Remember what the original issue was with Colin Kaepernick. Yes, it's not just about Colin Kaepernick having a job, but that symbolizes how the NFL feels about black people and minorities in general. If you speak out, they've already proven that they can get away with blackballing that person and causing fear in others so that they don't try to speak out in the future. And until the Colin Kaepernick situation is remedied, until he is allowed to play again in the league, we're basically saying, hey, there's nothing we can do. We're not big enough to combat what the NFL is trying to do. So, all people in the future should be scared to speak out. And I think that's what the NFL is trying to do, create a chilling effect. And that chilling effect is still very much a part of the NFL and a part of the country in general, of course.
And again, we're talking with Jamal Murphy, co-host of the Bill Rhoden on Sports podcast and contributor to ESPN's The Undefeated. So as we move this forward now, knowing that the business of the NFL is now mixing with the business of Rock Nation and its entertainment moving forward, what would you like to see come of this based on some of what we know and what we think could potentially happen from the inside, from within, with Jay-Z now partnering with the NFL? What would you like to see happen and come out of this based on what the deal has been struck with?
Well, I would love to see Jay-Z spearhead a situation where Colin Kaepernick is actually given a chance or given a chance to try out and make an NFL roster. We know that Colin Kaepernick has the talent to do that. That he's good enough. He's a good enough quarterback to be on a team. So that, I think, would remedy a lot of situations. I don't know how he would go. Obviously, he can't direct teams to pick him up, but there's pressure that can be exerted. Now, beyond that, which I admit is unlikely. It's unlikely that will happen. That he can cause Kaepernick to be picked up by a team. But beyond that, I think Jay-Z maybe can build a relationship with the owners to where they respect these 32 owners respect Jay-Z, and they start to implement things or implement policies that Jay-Z suggests to them that that in the long run can cause more diversity, can bring about more diversity within the league, within the power positions in the league. That maybe these owners will start to understand what black and African American fans want to see in the league. Respect the interests of black Americans in the league, and that sort of thing. So I think it's possible that Jay-Z can cause change to occur. But it'll be a slow process, and I think for the most part, what he's going to do is, deal with it on an entertainment level, which is where he's based. He's an entertainer, so he's going to deal with it, on an entertainment level, to where you'll see a diverse mix of performers, whether it be at the for the Super Bowl or commercials or that type of thing, to where the NFL will begin to look a little bit more inclusive along the lines of what the NBA is doing. So for me, I think it's more it's more kind of window dressing and entertainment wise where Jay-Z can make an impact, which is not to diminish that. I think that's something that matters also because it's perception. But that's where I see him making the most impact.
It should be a very interesting time with the NFL and Jay-Z moving forward now that they've struck this deal with this Imagine Change campaign and social justice initiative. Time will tell how this moves forward. Jamal, tell the folks that they can find you on your social media and your platform, sir.
Yeah, thanks. Check me out on Twitter at Blackatologist. Same thing on Instagram. Definitely check out the podcast with the legendary Bill Rhoden. Bill Rhoden on Sports on iTunes and SoundCloud. On Facebook, it's Bill Rhoden on Sports. Check that out. We're always dealing with issues like this that occur in sports.
Jamal is one of the best in the business, talking and dealing with these issues as he continues to do everything to bring these issues to light. Jamal, thank you so much for taking the time with us today on the Clutch Talk Sports Radio Live Show. I appreciate it, and enjoy the rest of the summer. I appreciate your time today.
Thanks a lot for having me. Appreciate it.
Again, that is Jamal Murphy, co-host of the Bill Rhoden on Sports podcast and contributor to ESPN's The Undefeated, as a tremendous writer, commentator on all things that deal with sports, legal issues, and social issues all across this country. Thank you again for him joining us on the Clutch Talk Sports Radio Live Show. This is CT Sports Radio Live on the Sports Radio America Network, TuneIn Radio, and the TuneIn app. Thank you to everyone joining us live today on sportsradioamerica.com and on YouTube. The phone lines are open, 888-444-0570. Coming up next, Demarcus Cousins. My man just can't catch a break. We'll talk about his latest injury and what it means for the Lakers moving forward. Next on the CT Sports Radio Live Show. We'll be right back.
Snickers presents 3 p.m. Brainstorms, world-changing ideas that unfortunately were conceived during the hungriest time of day. Like this idea from April 2015.
I think we should improve credit cards, make them even more convenient.
What if we put like a chip in most cards, not all, and instead of handing over your card, we'll just have this unmarked slot that you have to put it in.
Right, so no more swiping?
Well, sometimes you'll still swipe.
How will people know whether to swipe or insert the chip?
Whichever they do first, we'll just say that's wrong.
Okay. Now these chips, they'll be read instantly?
Well, you're going to have to feel out how far to push it in before it really registers.
Physical challenge. Smart.
Thank you. But after that, I think it should take 25 seconds or so.
All right, so it's not a time saver.
No, it's about convenience.
Okay.
And we'll announce this massive change to everyone?
You know what? I just think it's more fun for people to figure it out on their own.
People love to be challenged.
And we should also make it so you have to tip on everything.
I don't see why not.
I think we're onto something here.
Let's make it happen.
Don't brainstorm hungry. A reminder from your friends at Snickers.
Megan, you're the most gorgeous woman I've ever seen.
Say it again.
You're the most gorgeous woman I've ever seen.
Again?
You're the most gorgeous woman I've ever seen.
I'm sorry, what was that?
You're the most gorgeous woman I've ever seen.
Now, say it like you're feeding me chicken palm.
Dream better in a better bed. Get bed matched today at Mattress Warehouse.
Sheephappens.com.
All I'm saying is there was a bowl of water, a goldfish from a carnival, and a high-powered dehumidifier. Now there's just a bowl and a goldfish. Now just a bowl.
We just told you a sad story in 15 seconds. Imagine what Geico could do in 15 minutes. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance. So go to geico.com.
You're listening to Sports Radio America.
Welcome back in the Clutch Talk Sports Sports Radio Live on the Sports Radio America Network presented by Media MPC. Go to www.mediampc.com and download the app on your iOS and Android device to get your mobile phone it's on with Media MPC. If you don't catch anything live with us, make sure you download and subscribe to our free podcast available on Apple Podcasts. On Twitter, we are live on subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can watch the show streaming live for Clutch Talk Sports Radio. My producer, we take you off into your weekend as it is preseason week number 2 of the NFL. We're going to talk a little bit more NFL later on in our show. Ryan Talbot of Bills Updates is going to join us to talk all things NFL. We got some Dallas Cowboys news to get into. But we've got to talk a little NBA because, yes, we are in the NBA's offseason, and Team USA is getting beat down by a bunch of G League dudes as they get ready for the FIBA World Cup, even though none of the major players are playing for Team USA. And one player that they could have used is no longer going to be playing at all this year and maybe out the entire year, this upcoming year in the NBA. Demarcus Cousins tore his ACL this week in a scrimmage and working out in Las Vegas. The Los Angeles Lakers signed Demarcus Cousins, of course, earlier in July to a 1-year, $3.5 million deal. Demarcus Cousins is most likely going to be out for this season because he suffered a torn ACL. And look, Demarcus Cousins just can't catch a break. He already had dealt with a torn Achilles that he came back from. Then he tore his quad and dealt with that in the playoffs this past year. Came back, played a little bit, but wasn't very effective. And now, after seemingly looking like he lost some weight, because if you saw Demarcus Cousins when he signed with the Lakers, my man looked good. He looked like he was trimming up, looked like he was in shape, looked like he was getting ready for a really big season for the Los Angeles Lakers. And now this news of him tearing his ACL and most likely being out for the entire season, this upcoming season for the Los Angeles Lakers. And look, let's start with Demarcus Cousins and where he goes from here. My man is 29, 30 years old, okay? Or 29 years old. He'll be 30, obviously, next year. A lot of folks, and it's been really weird to watch over the last couple of days. I don't know if you've seen on social media, Memphis, but folks are treating this for Demarcus Cousins like his career is over. Like, right. It's done. I've seen, like, career highlight videos, like the best of Demarcus Cousins, like, videos and stuff like that. Like, it's really kind of weird how we're treating Demarcus Cousins based on what has happened with his injury. Now, look, I'm not necessarily ready to write off Demarcus Cousins just yet, but my goodness, a lot of folks seem like they're ready to write him off. Now, look, I understand. When you are 29, 30 years old, and you've dealt with, or now dealing with, probably the 2 worst injuries that you could ever experience as a basketball player, tearing an ACL and tearing an Achilles. Those are the 2 scariest injuries that any NBA player could ever possibly deal with. And Demarcus Cousins has dealt with now those 2 out of the last 3 years to go on top of the torn quadricep that he had and dealing with that during the playoffs. So, look, from Demarcus Cousins' perspective, I really hope this gets better for him. I really do, because Demarcus Cousins, when he came in from Kentucky, we're talking about one of the most talented big men that we've seen in a while. And when he was forming down there in New Orleans with Anthony Davis and that big man Twin Tower new coming of age situation that they had going on down there in New Orleans, it looked like it was the second coming of Tim Duncan and David Robinson, just in a new age with Anthony Davis and Demarcus Cousins. That's how good those 2 looked together when they were playing together. Then, of course, Demarcus Cousins doesn't get a max contract offer from the New Orleans Pelicans. He goes and signs with the Golden State Warriors, thought he was going to go get a ring and rehab his image, which I think he did rehab his image out there with Golden State, but he thought he was going to get a ring along with it. Then injuries derailed the Golden State Warriors in their attempt to win a 3rd straight NBA championship. Now Kevin Durant is gone. Klay Thompson is dealing with a torn ACL. And then Demarcus Cousins decides, I'm going to go ahead and move on, and decides to sign with the Los Angeles Lakers, who thought bringing in Demarcus Cousins was going to be pretty much the final piece in what we thought was a favorite to win the NBA championship. it is amazing how this injury has not only changed the outlook for Demarcus Cousins and the rest of his career, but more so the outlook for what the Los Angeles Lakers may be this year. Now, look, JaVale McGee was the starter at center for the Lakers last year. He's back for the Lakers this year. He may be the starter again going forward. Will most likely be the starter again for them moving forward. But he is not the kind of player, even at 75, 80, 90%, that Demarcus Cousins was expected to be. He was expected to be healthy, expected to be coming into this Los Angeles Lakers team and providing what we thought what we had seen with Anthony Davis and Demarcus Cousins when they were down there in New Orleans. Because again, what Demarcus Cousins and what Anthony Davis were building down there for the Pelicans was something special, and they thought they were going to be able to recreate some of that with the Lakers. Remember, Rajon Rondo and Anthony Davis were instrumental in bringing in Demarcus Cousins, basically telling him, like, look, we want you here because we know and what we saw between the two of you down there in New Orleans, and it was going to be something special. And then you pair that with, obviously, LeBron James on the back end of his career, looking to come back this year with a vengeance in the NBA as a 35-year-old looking to become the oldest player to ever win the MVP this year, because LeBron James, make no mistake about it, is coming on a revenge tour. The throne has been trifled with, and LeBron James isn't having it. And he thought he was going to have a subject in one Demarcus Cousins alongside with him to help him take over this NBA kingdom, where Kawhi Leonard has come into the backyard of LeBron James and tried to usurp his own power and put his own authority inside the Staples Center. Now Demarcus Cousins is not going to be a part of that. So for the Lakers going forward, look, this was already going to be a very interesting season for them. Anthony Davis, Demarcus Cousins, bringing in Rajon Rondo, JaVale McGee, some of the other players who they brought in to help LeBron James potentially get at least one championship out of this 4-year run that he's going to have with the Los Angeles Lakers. That's not going to happen now. And for Demarcus Cousins moving forward, I don't know where Demarcus Cousins really goes from here, because once he does come back, he'll be a year removed from a torn ACL and another year removed from a torn Achilles and a torn quadricep. I don't know how many folks are going to take a chance on Demarcus Cousins, because I know and understand this. Big men with the kinds of skills that Demarcus Cousins has are very hard to come by. And Demarcus Cousins was one of those guys who could shoot the basketball from the outside, could post up, wasn't necessarily the greatest defender, but what he didn't provide you on the defensive end, he more than made up for on the offensive side with his array of scoring and his ability to post up defenders and his ability to shoot from the outside. So what he didn't have on defense, he more than made up for it on the defensive end or on the offensive end of the basketball. Now the Lakers don't have any of that. And this changes a real dynamic with them about how they move forward, because look, teams were going to have a real hard time defending LeBron James and Anthony Davis as it was. Then you threw in the wrinkle of a Demarcus Cousins with his ability to go inside and out with the basketball, shooting and posting up defenders. Now that element is gone. So, yes, Anthony Davis may have to slide and down, play a little bit of center, which he doesn't necessarily, I don't think, want to play center all that much. Anthony Davis is more of a true power forward. The guy can shoot the basketball from the outside, can put the ball on the floor. He can do a lot of different things that a center, you wouldn't necessarily ask your center to do. So, look, Kyle Kuzma at times played center. The Lakers could put out a lineup that goes real small ball with LeBron James, Kyle Kuzma, like they did a little bit last year. Now you insert Anthony Davis and what he can do. There's going to be a lot of changes. Look, it was already going to be a hard season for Frank Vogel and this staff coming in to deal with in the first place. Now they lose DeMarcus Cousins and what that means for the Lakers going forward. Do I still think ultimately the Lakers have a chance to win a championship this year even without DeMarcus Cousins? Yes, because I was considering the Lakers as a championship favorite even if they didn't sign DeMarcus Cousins, and then they decided to sign DeMarcus Cousins, which made them, to me, a huge favorite to win an NBA championship. Now those championship hopes have diminished somewhat. And then on the flip side of this, yes, DeMarcus Cousins dealing with his injury with the Los Angeles Lakers. Very interesting wrinkle took place earlier this week as far as the Los Angeles Clippers were concerned as we transition from the Lakers to the Clippers. Tyronn Lue is most likely going to become the lead assistant coach for Doc Rivers and the Los Angeles Clippers. You want to talk about another wrinkle that has been thrown into this battle of L.A. If you remember, Tyronn Lue was supposed to be the head coach of the Los Angeles Lakers. The Los Angeles Lakers and Tyronn Lue couldn't get together on negotiations. They couldn't find common ground. Tyronn Lue says, nah, y'all can keep y'all $3 million or 3-year contract where I'm essentially tied to LeBron James as far as my tenure here is concerned. Nah, I don't want to do that. So Tyronn Lue regrouped, stepped back, removed himself from negotiations, and now it looks like he's going to get reunited with Doc Rivers. If you remember, Tyronn Lue used to be an assistant with your man Doc Rivers when he was out in Boston with the Boston Celtics. So there could be several things going on at play here. Look, Doc Rivers, I don't think is going to be getting out of coaching anytime soon. I think Doc Rivers is going to be around for a while. But you could naturally see a potential successor for Doc Rivers going forward. If Doc Rivers decides at one point that he's ready to go ahead and get out and transition to do something else, Tyronn Lue would be a natural fit, and I'm sure Doc Rivers would handpick Tyronn Lue to take over for him. Obviously, if something happened to him, but more importantly, if Doc Rivers eventually decides to get out of coaching altogether, Tyronn Lue would be that particular guy to step in. So now you just got another wrinkle and layer to this whole battle of L.A. that's obviously commenced with Kawhi Leonard and Paul George coming into the backyard of the Los Angeles Lakers to take on LeBron James and Anthony Davis. And now with Demarcus Cousins out, the NBA was already wide open as it was going into this year with no Kevin Durant with the Golden State Warriors. Klay Thompson dealing with his torn ACL, most likely out for the whole 2019-2020 NBA season. We thought the NBA was wide open. It has become even more wide open now that DeMarcus Cousins will most likely be out for all of 2019-2020 as well. So what was already going to be a tremendous season in the NBA just got that much more interesting with a big man going down. And again, I really hope for DeMarcus Cousins that this isn't the end. He's too good. He's too talented. And I think he still would have something to offer a team once he does come back from a torn ACL. But again, big men and knee problems, big men and leg problems, that's not a thing. And that's not a good thing. You saw what happened with folks like Greg Oden and others in the past who have dealt with significant leg injuries. Big men don't tend to bounce back well and bounce back quickly and aren't ever really the same after dealing with those kinds of injuries. And for DeMarcus Cousins, that is a real issue when you come off two of the most devastating injuries that a basketball player could have. A torn ACL and a torn Achilles. That ain't what you want if you're a big man, especially if DeMarcus Cousins' skill and the way that he's played the game as far as the NBA is concerned. So we'll see going forward how DeMarcus Cousins moves forward with this. But for the Lakers and what they've got going on, this is a devastating blow. And Kyle Kuzma talking about the fact, injuries like this, these are no joke, especially when you're talking about a guy in DeMarcus Cousins who was looking to put himself in a position and a space where he was going to be a major contributing factor to what the Lakers had going forward. So we will see how that goes. The Clutch Talk Sports Radio phone line is 888-444-0570. That's 888-444-0570 if you want to get in on the conversation today on the Clutch Talk Sports Radio live show. So again, DeMarcus Cousins out with a torn ACL, was going to probably miss the entire 2019-2020 NBA season. Things just got a whole lot more interesting for Frank Vogel, Jason Kidd, LeBron, Ramon, James, and the Los Angeles Lakers in the Battle of L.A. with Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. Kawhi Leonard and Paul George won't have to worry about seeing DeMarcus Cousins on the floor because DeMarcus Cousins is out. And where Cousins goes from here, who knows, man? That's tough. Memphis, what was your reaction when you heard the news that DeMarcus Cousins had torn his ACL?
Well, it's funny because people rolling out, hearses and making funeral home reservations and everything for this guy's career. And I'm like, whoa, slow down. We've seen centers, and I get it. Bigger men sometimes take harder falls, but we've seen centers play late in their careers, even when having injuries. And I just don't understand the whole idea of just, saying that, DeMarcus Cousins is going to hang it up, even though this is the third, I guess you call major injury in his career.
Yeah.
I think the way that medicine works today, it's a lot better than, say, 20 years ago or something like that, where, we may not have known the situation. We may not know if he could make a comeback, but he's still young enough to do this.
Yeah.
I think I'm safe to say that DeMarcus Cousins is going to be back, and you will see him playing again Maybe not at the exact same level that we were used to seeing him before, but he'll still be playing. But I like to throw this in also. Isn't it great now that people are worried about Demarcus Cousins' career when all that time that he spent in Sacramento, we never really saw him on a national level? Well, even though he's out there balling, we just never really saw him.
Yeah, he's become a really tragic, sympathetic figure with dealing with all these injuries. Look, him and John Wall, man, John Wall, of course, is dealing with the Achilles, and now Demarcus Cousins is dealing with another devastating leg injury. We may not see either John Wall or Demarcus Cousins until the beginning of the 2020 season next year. That is how long and how devastating these injuries have been for both of these players. And I feel really bad especially for Demarcus Cousins, because he worked his way back from that torn Achilles, looked like he was going to be a guy that could at least get himself together. Look, I know it's hard to come back from torn Achilles, and we'll see how Kevin Durant comes back from his. But it looked like he was getting himself together and rounding himself into form to be a contributing member for the Los Angeles Lakers. And for him to have this devastating injury, I feel terrible for him. And I hope that he is able to come back better once he is recovered from this ACL. But wide open season just got that much more wide open across the NBA now with the news of Demarcus Cousins going down with his torn ACL. This is the Clutch Talk Sports Radio live on the Sports Radio America Network, TuneIn Radio, and the TuneIn app. Thank you to all those joining us live today on the CT Sports Radio live show, not only on sportsradioamerica.com, TuneIn Radio, but also live on YouTube at youtube.com/Clutch Talk Sports Radio. Come back with us at the top of the hour on the Sports Radio America Network. It is preseason week 2 of the NFL. We've got to talk about Kyler Murray. We've got to talk about all kinds of NFL action taking place this weekend, including man Lamar Jackson last night. This is real sports talk. Sports Radio live. We'll be back at the top of the hour. Sports Radio America Network and on YouTube. Come back with us.
You can learn to DIY just about anything.
Today I'm going to teach you how to defend yourself in a court of law. It's important to wear a fancy suit. That way, if they ask for evidence, you can point to it and say, Exhibit A.
After all, some things are better left to the pros, like buying a home, because without an expert to guide you, you could be headed for trouble.
If you're backed into a corner, throw out a few objections. Works every time.
So DIY yourself a favor and get Realtor. Head to Realtor.com/GetRealtor today. Realtors are members of the National Association of Realtors.
Stop global swarming! Global swarming is real, and the mosquitoes are back. Call Mosquito Nix immediately, helping stop global swarming and protecting outdoor lifestyles for over 15 years. Now offering 15% off all custom mosquito systems that eliminates flying, biting, pesky mosquitoes and insects. 15% off all custom mosquito systems. Mosquito Nix, the best in the business. Find them at mosquitonix.com. Offer for a limited time only.
How to be cool. Brought to you by Air King Fans. Tip 91. Put on a leather jacket. Now take off the leather jacket, because those things are hot. Sit by an Air King fan until coolness is achieved. Now that's cool.
Clear the road. We have supplies inbound.
Are you a problem solver? The Air National Guard never shies from tomorrow's problems. We run to them. Ready for world-class military training and global missions? Help us design the blueprint for a better future. Serve close to home and build the life you want with the Air National Guard. Visit us at goang.com or call us at 1-800.
You're listening to Sports Radio America.
Welcome back to Clutch Talk Sports Radio Live. Now here's your host, Kevin Gray.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Clutch Talk Sports Radio Live on the Sports Radio America Network, presented by Media MPC. Go to www.mediampc.com and download Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at CT Sports Radio. And you can also like and subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can see us currently streaming our show live on youtube.com/Clutch Talk Sports Radio. And visit ClutchTalkSportsRadio.com for everything for the CT Sports Radio live show. We are live on the Sports Radio America Network, TuneIn Radio, and the TuneIn app. My producer, Memphis Spence, along for the ride with me today on our show. Thank you to everyone joining us live today on the CT Sports Radio live show, sending you off into your weekend. A tremendous weekend of action ahead of us all across the entire sporting landscape. It is preseason week number 2 of the NFL UFC 241. I cannot wait for UFC 241 in the main event. Stipe Miocic looks to get back his UFC heavyweight championship against DC Daniel Cormier, one of the greatest heavyweights of all time in the UFC. That is the main event of UFC 241 out in Anaheim, California. The return of the bad boy Nate Diaz at 170 pounds, taking on Showtime Anthony Pettis. It should be really, really good action out there at UFC 241 this weekend and the UFC. Preseason week number 2 of the NFL is also underway across the National Football League. We'll get into the Dallas Cowboys a little bit later on in the show. The Dallas Cowboys are going to be in Hawaii this weekend taking on the Los Angeles Rams, but there has already been action underway that took place last night. The Oakland Raiders took on the Arizona Cardinals. Kyler Murray, look, not good, not great, not good. If you ask Steve Keim, the general manager of the Arizona Cardinals, he'll tell you otherwise. He was happy with Kyler Murray's performance. I don't know about that.
That's just coach speak. Coach speak.
I think so, because I think at one point the Cardinals were down 26-0 to the Oakland Raiders in that football game. At one point down 26-0 to the Oakland Raiders. Mike Glennon was the backup, played okay. Andy Isabella. Remember Andy Isabella? We talked about him a little bit in our pre-draft stuff earlier this year. He had a one catch for 59 yards and a touchdown for the Arizona Cardinals, so he played pretty well. The star of the night, though, was your man Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson for the Baltimore Ravens. Now, the Ravens won 26-13. The Green Bay Packers are dealing with an interesting situation with your man Aaron Rodgers. He didn't play in the preseason game last night. We thought we were going to see a little bit of preseason action from Aaron Rodgers. Not so much. He's dealing with an injury right now, so the Packers obviously no reason to play Aaron Rodgers for who, for what. But the guy that did play put on a show. Lamar Jackson, look, if you remember last year, Lamar Jackson came in for Joe Flacco during the second half of the season. The Ravens went, I believe, 6-1, went to the playoffs, and you saw what the Los Angeles Chargers, you saw what the Baltimore Ravens could potentially look like with Lamar Jackson as the full-time starter. The electrifying Louisville Heisman Trophy winner came in and set the NFL on fire in those 7 games and helped the Baltimore Ravens get to the playoffs. And obviously now Joe Flacco moving on to the Denver Broncos as they try to do something with Joe Flacco. I don't know what they're going to do with Joe Flacco. Who knows? But the Lamar Jackson era is fully underway in Baltimore. And last night, my man put on a head-spinning, twisting, in and out of traffic, turning, hurtling touchdown that, yes, was called back because of a ridiculous penalty. By the way, sidebar, the NFL officials so far in the first 2 weeks of preseason have been really bad. There was a terrible call last night on a penalty on Josh Norman for a roughing the receiver penalty or some sort. The referees have been really bad so far. I know it's preseason for everybody, but the referees have been especially bad so far in these preseason games so far. But nonetheless, Lamar Jackson had the touchdown call back, but you saw the glimpse of what Lamar Jackson and this offense could potentially be. Now, look, your man Lamar Jackson met Aaron Rodgers after the game was over with. Lamar Jackson, Aaron Rodgers exchanging jerseys, exchanging handshakes, hugs, this, that, and the third. Hey, have a great season. Good to meet you, this, that, and the third. Aaron Rodgers gave your man Lamar Jackson a piece of advice. He said, look, man, I'm going to holler at you for a second. You need to slide a little bit. And I'm sure John Harbaugh feels the same way. I know Memphis tweeted about it. Like he loves seeing it, but hates seeing it all at the same time.
At the same time.
And I echo your sentiments. Look, I love Lamar Jackson as much as anybody. I felt like this guy could come in. Yes, has to continue to grow as a passer. There's no question about that. But the reports have been out of camp that he has been as accurate as anybody across the National Football League. And folks who have observed him, folks who have watched him, folks who have talked about him say that he's ready to make that next progression as a quarterback in the NFL. His accuracy has been terrific in training camp thus far, and it's getting better as you start to see him make better decisions with the football. Obviously, that's going to happen for a player that's as dynamic as Lamar Jackson is, and at the same time is athletically gifted as Lamar Jackson. And look, the Baltimore Ravens brought in Earl Thomas on the defensive side of the ball. They also brought in Mark Ingram from the New Orleans Saints on the offensive side of the ball to give a guy in Lamar Jackson weapons around him, especially offensively, obviously, to continue to help him get better at the quarterback position. I think Lamar Jackson is going to have a fantastic year. Is he going to make mistakes in the pocket? Yes, he's a second-year player. He's going to make mistakes in the pocket. I don't think he's going to turn the ball over. I think he's going to make much better decisions with the football, and at times he's going to be able to bail out plays with his legs, and you saw that on that touchdown run that he had. He can make things when things break down and when things are off schedule. That is what Lamar Jackson can do, and that is what I think he's going to do a lot for the Baltimore Ravens this year. Look, you don't want Lamar Jackson turning it loose on every single play, because that scares me if I'm a John Harbaugh or somebody on the offensive side for the Baltimore Ravens. Because I want to see, look, I don't mind if Lamar Jackson is making things happen when things break down. No problem there. Things are going to break down from time to time in terms of plays. What I don't want to see, and I hope continues for him to progress, is the idea that he's not relying on his legs because he's not seeing things down the field properly when he should be making the best reads that he can to get the ball out of his hands quickly. Because so far in preseason, so far in training camp, my man's getting the ball out of his hands quickly. He's putting the ball in the right places. He's being much more accurate with the football. And more importantly, he's seeing the things from a coverage standpoint that allows him to make the best decision with the football so that he doesn't have to use his legs to bail out plays when he necessarily didn't have to because he didn't see something down the field. That is the progression for Lamar Jackson that I want to continue to see for him moving forward. If that happens, and if he's making plays with his legs, not because he didn't see what was going on, but because something broke down or something was off schedule, no problem, no big deal. Slide, do your thing. But if he's making plays with his arm from within the pocket and even outside of the pocket, because you saw some of that last year in his 7 games when he took over for Joe Flacco, his ability to throw the ball on the run, his ability to get outside of the pocket and make things happen with his arm downfield, that is when things get scary for a guy in Lamar Jackson. And that's when things get fun if you're the Baltimore Ravens, especially in a division where you got Memphis's Pittsburgh Steelers, when you got the expectations of your man Odell Beckham and Baker Mayfield out there in Cleveland. There's a lot of expectations in that AFC North, and a lot of folks trying to get at a top of a division where the Pittsburgh Steelers may be a little vulnerable with no Antonio Brown, with no Le'Veon Bell, and those things going on there. Speaking of Antonio Brown, they finally looks like they've got this thing figured out with Antonio Brown. Look, let me tell you what was not going to happen. Antonio Brown wasn't finna quit over a helmet and $30 million. In fact, he even talked about it. He was like, I don't know where those reports came from about I was going to quit playing football. My life is good. I enjoy playing football, this, that, and the third. Okay, no problem. No big deal. Antonio Brown wasn't quitting over a helmet for $30 million. They'll get that thing figured out. And more importantly, him and Derek Carr got to get on the same page. He's got to get over those cryotherapy frostbitten feet. If you want to get on the conversation, 888-444-0570 is the phone number if you want to get in on the Clutch Talk Sports Radio live show. So all things seem to be well and good for the Oakland Raiders with respect to Antonio Brown and what he's got going on moving forward. As we spin this forward, other games that are going to be taking place this week. Look, the Indianapolis Colts need to get this thing figured out with Andrew Luck. Andrew Luck, there was a terrific piece in The Athletic by Stephen Holder talking about the idea that Andrew Luck doesn't really like talking about his injuries, but at the same time, him not really talking about his injuries really is kind of a detriment to what the Indianapolis Colts are trying to do. He's tried to do better in opening up and talking about his injuries, but at the same time, the secrecy that has shrouded Andrew Luck and what he's got going on with his leg, calf, ankle problem, that's a huge issue for the Indianapolis Colts because this is a team that's really good. They've got a good running back out there with Marlon Mack, who played really well for them last year. They've got an all-pro linebacker in Darius Leonard, who was spectacular in his rookie season as a defensive rookie of the year in the NFL last year. And they've got T.Y. Hilton still there. This is a team that can make a run in the AFC, but can Andrew Luck stay healthy is going to be the major question for them going forward. They've solved what's looked like the offensive line problems that they've had in years past where they couldn't keep Andrew Luck healthy and upright. And now Andrew Luck still isn't completely healthy. That's really a scary thought if you're Jim Irsay, who really shouldn't be speaking on injuries anyway. Jim Irsay and Frank Wright, the head coach, and Chris Ballard, the GM for the Indianapolis Colts. So that's going to be interesting to see moving forward, obviously, for them also. They played the Cleveland Browns, the aforementioned Cleveland Browns, on Saturday. The Patriots and the Titans get down this week. The Chiefs, speaking of the Steelers, the Chiefs take on the Steelers. Sunday or Saturday evening, the Detroit Lions take on the Houston Texans. The Dallas Cowboys, which we'll talk about a little bit later on in the show, take on the Los Angeles Rams in Hawaii. The Saints take on the Chargers. The Vikings take on the Seahawks, and the 49ers take on the Denver Broncos on Monday night. Speaking of the San Francisco 49ers, Memphis, I don't know if you saw this, but your man Jimmy Garoppolo got out there and threw 5 interceptions in practice the other day.
Jimmy G.
Yeah, 5.
I'm glad somebody decided to pay him $137 million before we know whether or not he can play quarterback. Glad to see that.
He threw 5 straight interceptions in practice the other day, and obviously that's not good. So we'll see how San Francisco figures out that whole QB situation if Jimmy Garoppolo can get it together. But again, we're getting that much closer to the start of the NFL season. The NFL season starts on September 5th, obviously, with the NFL's 100th season of football taking place. But there's a lot of interesting training camp storylines all across the National Football League. The Chargers, Melvin Gordon is still not in camp. He is still not in camp. Ezekiel Elliott, of course, still not in camp. We'll talk about that a little bit later on in the show and what's going on with him down there in Cabo. Teams are really trying to figure out some things going forward. Week 2, you can start to see a little bit more of the starters into some of these games. They usually play about a quarter and a half, if just a quarter. And then that third preseason game is obviously the dress rehearsal game. You'll see the starters most likely into the third quarter of most of those third preseason games as they continue to get themselves ready for opening week of the National Football League. But look, man, it's some interesting stuff going on. Dwayne Haskins played pretty well last night. I think he went 7-14 through a nice deep ball touchdown pass. Starting to see some of these things take place and start to come into focus for these teams as they start to whittle down their rosters to 53-man rosters before the NFL season starts. So there's a lot of stuff going on across the NFL. Preseason action, guys trying to stay healthy. Look, the biggest thing for these teams, especially going through training camp and now getting into these preseason games where they're back into their cities and training at their home facilities for the rest of the time before the season starts. Stay healthy. Do what you can to stay healthy. If you feel like there's a situation where you feel like a player isn't necessarily up to 100% to even go out and play a few series in a preseason game, don't play him. You saw that with Green Bay and Aaron Rodgers last night. Green Bay thought that Aaron Rodgers was going to be able to go. No, they kept him out. Aaron Rodgers did not play last night. No problem. No big deal. So teams right now, this is an interesting time of training camp. This happens every year in training camp. You come out of that training camp phase. You come out of that first preseason game. And then you start turning things up a little bit because you're going to have to make decisions on roster moves. You got to start figuring out how teams are going to be composed and put together and trying to evaluate guys and making sure, more importantly, that they stay healthy. And as you go more into these weeks of preseason NFL action, that is the name of the game, especially when you get to that third preseason game where you see a lot of the starters into the third quarter of these games. Staying healthy is the priority for these football teams. But yeah, man, there's a lot of interesting stuff going on right now across the NFL.
Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. Who's going to have a breakout year in the AFC North this year? Is it going to be Baker Mayfield or Lamar Jackson?
I'm going to go with Lamar Jackson. I really like what he's got going there. I think he's made a lot of progressions and a lot of interesting moves for himself. I think he looks better out of the pocket. I think he looks much more confident in the pocket. I think he's going to be a guy.
By the way, and you may know this name. I'm not sure if you do or not, but do you know who James Urban is? Because he was the guy way back when he's the quarterback coach now there for the Ravens. But way back when, Philly was into, promoting black quarterbacks, he worked with McNabb at the end of his career and then got Michael Vick kind of acclimated into the system. Now they brought him over there to Baltimore, and he's been the one working with my man Lamar Jackson there. And apparently Lamar really is vibing and feeling him. Because he looks a lot better. He's a lot better. We saw him out there in California. I saw him for the first time. I've seen him earlier on in his career when I was at Louisville. Oh, yeah, absolutely. All the time. And his family's down here in Florida in Pompano Beach and whatnot. He's a Florida kid. Mm-hmm. But all that being said, I think that everybody's talking about Baker Mayfield. But watch how, and I hate saying this because I'm a Steelers fan, but watch how the Ravens come through this year and start kicking down doors, because the only thing that we needed to see was Lamar Jackson be able to read these defenses, because I think that was what we were struggling with the most, and a lot of quarterbacks struggle with that, moving from college to the NFL. A lot of quarterbacks struggle trying to the speed of the game, A, but B, being able to read those defenses, So, but if he can read them, he can get the ball there. We all know, we've seen his arm. We saw what it looked like in college, and we know we just got a taste of his feet again. So we kind of know that both of those things, his accuracy is going to be fine. If he can read those defenses, and his feet, he can make people miss all the time. So I think quietly and as humble as he is, he may be the breakout player this year in the NFL. Just keep an eye on him.
Yeah, the AFC North is going to be fun to watch. The Steelers with Ben Roethlisberger, Juju Smith-Schuster, obviously Baker Mayfield, and Odell Beckham. And then, of course, Lamar Jackson and his progression. Who cares about Cincinnati and the Bengals, and Andy Dalton? Who cares about what they got going on? They're not going to be any kind of factor in the AFC North. So, but yeah, this Lamar Jackson thing, oh boy, this Lamar Jackson thing. I told y'all this Lamar Jackson thing is going to be something scary and something special to watch, and I think we're on our way to seeing that. This is the Clutch Talk Sports Radio Live on the Sports Radio America Network, TuneIn Radio, and the TuneIn app is streaming live on YouTube. Coming up next, sticking with the NFL, my man Ryan Talbot of Bills Updates is going to join us next to give a little bit of some preview of the Buffalo Bills and a little bit more about preseason week number 2 of the NFL next. The T2 Sports Radio Live show.
My horse has got some kind of problem with his foot.
Oh, no. Well, I hope he's okay.
Me too.
Do you know what Cookie's making for supper tonight?
Beans, I reckon.
That makes sense.
That harmonica's nice.
Yeah, that's soothing. Oh, I'm thinking about getting a new hat.
I think you should.
Cowboy times were boring. They only seem interesting because we watch westerns and everything else on DirecTV. Get 45,000 shows and movies. Get DirecTV. More for your old movies thing. That's our thing.
Requires subscription to DirecTV's top-tier premier programming package. Other packages have fewer titles. Restrictions apply. Visit DirecTV.com.
And now, the worst commercial ever.
Hi, I am Justin Galvin, retired athlete from your local ball team, so I know a thing or two about insuring a landscaping business. I trust the pros, commercial auto and business insurance through Progressive. Get customized insurance solutions that'll hit a grand slam home run for you. We done?
A totally mailed-in celebrity endorsement. Awful. Whereas commercial auto and business insurance through Progressive is anything but. Visit progressivecommercial.com to quote today.
When you're straightforward, people can tell. When you're doing an ad for Old Spice Cooling with Mint Body Wash, you should probably mention it. Old Spice Cooling with Mint Body Wash. Now Walmart.
This is Shaquille O'Neal. You know Shaq, Shaq Diesel, Superman, Big Aristotle, Big Cactus, Big Shamrock. If you're not listening to Sports Radio America, play Shaq Fu.
Phone line for our next guest. He is a friend of the program. He is a NFL columnist for the Buffalo Bills for Bills Updates, covering all things for the Buffalo Bills. His name is Ryan Talbot. Ryan, good afternoon to you, sir.
Hey, good afternoon. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, thank you so much for taking the time with us today on the CT Sports Radio live show once again. Ryan, let's just jump right in with you. This is a Buffalo Bill football team. Josh Allen, the starting quarterback for this team. They're taking on the Carolina Panthers this weekend in preseason week number 2 of the NFL. How has Josh Allen looked as far as your observations are concerned for this Buffalo Bill team going into his second year as starter for this football team?
I think he looks much improved from year one. The big thing that they've really focused on this offseason and this summer is having him hit those checkdowns, hitting those short passes. And that might sound a little silly from the outside, but if you watched Josh Allen last year, if the Bills got backed up in a situation, maybe it was a holding penalty on first down, and all of a sudden it was 1st and 20, Allen would try to pick up all 20 yards in one play, it felt like at times. He had the arm strength to do so, don't get me wrong. But this year they've been saying, listen, we can pick up a little bit of yards here and there. You don't have to go for the big play every single time. So they bring in Cole Beasley. They bring in John Brown to help stretch the field. They still have Zay Jones. They still have Robert Foster. Andre Roberts has been a pleasant surprise. They're pretty banged up at the tight end position, but they have a lot of talent there as well from one season ago. And you're seeing it a lot this summer where he's dropping it off Cole Beasley. He's hitting his his running backs out of the backfield. And the coaching staff and the quarterbacks coach, Ken Dorsey, offensive coordinator Brian Dable, they're all praising him for it. And it's one of those little things where if he can get those short passes mixed in with that big arm, you're going to see his completion percentage rise. And I'm not going to say necessarily over 60%. You're going to see him in the high 50s at least, which would be a pretty big increase from one season ago. And you're going to see him also move the chains a lot more, which I think it would be very positive for both sides of the ball for the Bills.
Josh Allen going into year number 2 as the starter for this Buffalo Bill football team. Still just 23 years of age, looking to improve going forward for this team in the AFC East. We're talking with Ryan Talbot of New York Upstate and Bills Updates today, talking all things with the Buffalo Bills and NFL today on the CT Sports Radio live show. Obviously, one of the best players on this team, especially on the offensive side of the ball, is running back LaShawn McCoy. What are your expectations for LaShawn McCoy now at age 31 to try and help this offense continue to improve, especially if Josh Allen can make the kinds of progressions that you've seen so far in camp?
Well, I think you're going to see a much better season from LaShawn McCoy in 2019. First and foremost, because the Bills went out and really revamped their offensive line. The offensive line was a disaster last year. There were plays where McCoy was handed the ball, and there was already one or two players in the backfield. And as elusive as he is, he's not quite that elusive to break away from two players, one player right as he gets the ball in his hands. So they went out and they added talent across the line. Most likely you're going to see 4 new starters this year. Deion Dawkins will be the remaining starter, but you'll most likely have Quentin Spain, Mitch Morse. You'll have, it could be Cody Ford at right guard. He's been working at guard and tackle, and then Tyan Secchi at right tackle. So they really revamped that line to help with the run game. I don't think you'll see LaShawn McCoy at that 3.2 yard per carry. I think he'll be close to that 4 yard per carry mark. And they also added a lot of talent to the running back room where he doesn't have to be the guy. He can be rested at times, and then maybe he'll have fresh legs in the third, fourth quarter where the defense is tired and he can break off those big runs because you have Frank Gore. And Frank Gore, as great as he is in the locker room, he's not just here to be a locker room presence. He's going to get his fair share of carries. Devin Singletary has blown away the coaching staff, teammates, the media alike this summer. He looks like the real deal. He may not have that breakaway speed to rip off those really long runs, but he has great vision. He has that elusiveness to help the Bills move the chain. So there's a top 3 right there that looks pretty solid on paper. So all of that together is going to help LaShawn McCoy here in 2019.
LaShawn McCoy looking to have a bounce-back year for this Buffalo Bills team as they continue to move forward in the AFC East. We're talking with Ryan Talbot of New York Upstate and Bills Updates today on the Clutch Talk Sports Radio live show. Ryan, let's switch our focus to the defensive side of the football. A team that's got some really talented players on the defensive side of the football. When you start looking up and down this defensive starting lineup, for you, who has been the best player defensively in camp so far for this Bills football team?
Oh, that's a great question. You know, I'd probably have to go to the safety position. Jordan Poyer seems to always be making plays in the secondary. Micah Hyde right behind him. But this defense is stacked. You know, on any given day, if you ask that question, who was the best player that day, there would be days where I would have said Tremaine Edmonds. There would be days where I would have said Ed Oliver, you know, a rookie here, first season where he just was blowing up plays left and right some days. Jerry Hughes is a constant disruptor there. You have Lorenzo Alexander, who's solid as can be. Matt Milano, who has flashed a little bit this summer as he's coming back from a pretty serious injury. Not quite there yet consistently, but another guy who's been great. And then you obviously have Trey White, too, who has been a number 1 cornerback for this team since he was a rookie. So there's just so much talent on the defensive side of the ball. It's really hard to just pick one player. But, you know, Jordan Poyer seems to, from day one of camp, he seems to have been like in mid-season form in terms of reading and diagnosing plays, making interceptions, reading what the offense is trying to do. So I've been really impressed with him this summer.
This Buffalo Bill team is really, really good on the defensive side of the ball. They got a lot of tremendous players who can make plays all over the football field. We're talking with Ryan Talbot of Bills Updates today on the Clutch Talk Sports Radio Live show. My name is Kevin Gray, host of Clutch Talk Sports Radio Live on the Sports Radio America Network, streaming live on YouTube. Based on your observations, obviously, for this entire football team, how will Sean McDermott lean, particularly on this defense, to really give them an opportunity to compete much more during the season? Is the defense going to be the catalyst for this football team moving forward for them?
Well, yeah, I think the defense should be the catalyst for this team as long as they have a top 3, top 5 unit in the league, which right now they do. They finished number 2 last year in terms of yards allowed, so they were a top 3, top 5 defense last year. The one area they need to pick up the slack, obviously, is getting after the quarterback and creating sacks. Jerry Hughes created a lot of pressure last year that didn't necessarily transition to a huge sack year for him. But you add Ed Oliver for the interior rush. Trenton Murphy looks really good 2 years removed from the ACL injury. You have Shaq Lawson now in more of a backup role behind Jerry Hughes. He had more success from that side of the line. And they've even had some flashes from rookie Darrell Johnson and second-year player Mike Love, who was an undrafted free agent 1 year ago. So they've had a little bit of signs of improvement this summer at that area. And if that area can pick it up, that defense is going to be one of those top units. And then, you know, he can lean on the defense to limit offenses in terms of keeping points down per game. And then all of a sudden, you don't need Josh Allen in the offense flinging the ball all over the field. You just need him to be, and I don't like to use the term game manager because you want him to be more than that, don't get me wrong. But you want him to limit his turnovers, trust that the defense can keep you in the game and do enough to keep you in these games here, late in games, where you can end up winning, being in playoff contention this year, because the Patriots are still the Patriots. They're most likely going to win this division. But I really do think that if the defense is as good as advertised and the offense takes that next step, which I think they really can, not just because of the offense is so good, but you add a guy like Andre Roberts on special teams, kick return, punt return, he can help the Bills with their starting field position in 2019. And all of a sudden, you can put Josh Allen in that offense in good situations to put them in that area to improve in terms of points per game, the amount of yards that they get through the air, on the ground, etc. So I think this is a team that it might surprise some people, but I think they can really compete legitimately for a wild card spot this year.
That is news and music to the ears of Buffalo Bill fans looking to see improvement out of this football team going into this year. We're talking with Ryan Talbot of Bills Updates today on the Clutch Talk Sports Radio live show. Ryan, let's expand our look to the entire NFL picture. Week 2 of the NFL's preseason already underway and going into this weekend. A storyline for you outside of the Buffalo Bills that's caught your attention that you're looking forward to and paying attention to during week 2 of this preseason NFL action, what would that be?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, one thing I'll talk about is last night's games. Unfortunately, you saw the Jets lose one of their starting linebackers for the year, and Avery Williamson to a torn ACL. That's the one thing I monitor is injuries. It's one of the worst feelings in the world covering a football team is seeing these players, no matter if it's on the Bills or any team in this league, working so hard in the off season, working hard this summer to prepare, having high expectations for the year, and then all of a sudden your season is over before it begins. So, that was one thing. Last night I was really looking forward to watching Kyler Murray. He really struggled last night. I wouldn't necessarily put too much. If I was a Cardinals fan, I wouldn't read too much into that, just because your plays, it's very vanilla in the preseason. You're going to see more scheming and things of that nature here come week 1. But I was looking forward to seeing him after he had a solid debut. And obviously, you watch all the other teams in the division. You saw the Jets move right down the field for a touchdown last night with Sam Darnold. He scored a touchdown on his opening drive in week 1 as well. So you're kind of monitoring the competition, too, to see what they bring to the table. So those are the big things that I'm watching for. And obviously, I'll keep an eye here on the Dolphins and Patriots this weekend as well.
Should be a very interesting weekend of preseason action across the NFL. We're talking with Ryan Talbot of Bills Updates today on the Clutch Talk Sports Radio live show on the Sports Radio America Network. Ryan, tell the folks where they can find you on your social media and your platform, sir.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Ryan Talbot Bills. You can find our work at Bills Updates as well on Twitter. And you can find our work at NewYorkUpstate.com or NYUp.com.
Ryan does a tremendous job covering this Buffalo Bill football team. A lot of expectations for Sean McDermott, Josh Allen, and this entire Buffalo Bill football team as they look to compete in the AFC East, where, of course, the defending Super Bowl and AFC East champions are, of course, the New England Patriots. Ryan, thank you so much for the time. I sincerely appreciate it. Enjoy this weekend's action, and we'll talk to you soon. I appreciate the time today.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Again, that is Ryan Talbot of Bills Updates. Good enough to join us today on the Clutch Talk Sports Radio live show, talking all things NFL preseason action, including for the Buffalo Bills. Look, man, they've got a really talented roster, especially on the defensive end. I think a lot of folks forget how good this team was defensively last year. One of the best defenses in the NFL. Obviously, these headlines surrounded Josh Allen and his inaccuracy at the quarterback position. But as Ryan has talked about, it appears that he's getting some of that worked out. They obviously added a guy in Cole Beasley, who Dallas Cowboy fans know extremely well. Cole Beasley's had a lot of things to say about the Dallas Cowboys on his way out the door and signing with the Buffalo Bills. I was one of the ones that was critical of Cole Beasley signing with the Buffalo Bills, thinking, why in the world would you go sign to go play with a guy in Josh Allen, knowing the kind of inaccuracy issues that he has had so far in his NFL career, and go take that pounding for who, for what out there in Buffalo. But only time will tell if Josh Allen, again, who's 23 years old, He's got all. Look, there was no question about the measurables of Josh Allen. 6'3" or 6'5", over 225 pounds. Big, strong arm. The dude just couldn't throw an accurate pass to save his life. And you saw last year the physical gifts that he had running the football. He was terrific running the football, but again, that's not what you're asking your quarterback to do at this level. You're asking your quarterback to throw the football down the field and to keep the team on schedule with removing the football, on the offensive side of the football. So we'll see with Josh Allen. We'll see what he has. We'll see how he continues to grow, how he continues to get better, and obviously a defense that's going to carry him. That defense is really, really good. And they're going to see about carrying Josh Allen this year, and hopefully he can put them in positions to where he's not throwing them out of football games. The thing, look, we've seen it with teams in the past, like a Baltimore Ravens team with Trent Dilfer way back in the day, with a team like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers with Brad Johnson, a championship-level defense. You even saw it with Peyton Manning in his trick neck back in 2015. Just don't throw the team out of football games if you're a team like if you're Josh Allen and his Buffalo Bills team, because your defense is that good, and they can compete with anybody, especially on the defensive side of the football. So we'll see. We'll see how the Buffalo Bills compete, especially in that AFC East division where, of course, the Super Bowl champion New England Patriots reside. Again, thank you to Ryan Talbot of Bills Updates for joining us today on the Clutch Talk Sports Radio live show. This is Clutch Talk Sports Radio live on the Sports Radio American Network, TuneIn Radio, and the TuneIn app. The phone lines are open, 888-444-0570. Zeke Elliott is still not in camp, but I'll tell you why he's looking good and why the Dallas Cowboys should be out there thinking about more NFL preseason NFL action. Next, on Sports Radio.
Pretzel Crust fans, rejoice because it's back. By popular demand, Little Caesars large, soft pretzel crust pizza featuring a creamy cheddar cheese sauce, pepperoni, and a 4-cheese blend surrounded by a delicious salted soft pretzel crust for just $6. Hot and ready every day between 4 and 8, and only $6 from the home of pretzel crust pizza, Little Caesars.
Pizza. At participating locations plus tax.
Your cell phone's connected to your tablet. Your tablet's connected to your laptop. Your laptop's connected to your Wi-Fi. 1 weak link and thieves are in.
The digital world is so connected these days, it just takes 1 weak link for criminals to get in. New LifeLock identity theft protection now adds the power of Norton Security to help protect against the threats of today's connected world.
Your desktop's connected to your smart TV. Your smart TV's connected to your smartwatch.
Threats to your identity, like your info for sale on the dark web. And online threats to your devices, like ransomware. No one can prevent all identity theft or cybercrime or monitor all transactions at all businesses, but new LifeLock with Norton detects a wide range of threats to your identity and devices. And if there's a problem, our agents work to fix it.
Your smartwatch is connected to your video doorbell. Your video doorbell's connected to your smart lock.
Join now and get an additional 10% off your first year. Go to LifeLock.com and enter promo code 100. That's promo code 100. New LifeLock with Norton. More detection, more protection.
It's the game everyone's talking about. Shim Sham, a laugh-out-loud adventure for you and your
cockroaches.
Part board game, part dance-off, Shim Sham is loads of fun for
cockroaches
of all ages. Just spin the wheel, strike your post, and get ready for a
scurrying cockroach.
Don't let roaches ruin the moment. Orkin, home is where the bugs aren't. Tap now for $50 off your first Orkin service.
Every day across America, terrible quotes are happening.
Parrots are not as smart as they say they are.
There's dried fruit because there's no fruit lotion.
Pandas seem like the cutest way to die.
If dreams are what is to come, let us brace for werewolves.
So terrible.
But thanks to Safe Auto, you can get a great car insurance quote in just 3 minutes that could save you 25%. Visit safeauto.com today.
You're listening to Sports Radio America.
Welcome back into Clutch Talk Sports Radio live on the Sports Radio America Network, presented by Media MPC. Go to www.mediampc.com and download the app on your iOS and Android device and get your mobile press conference on. This Media MPC. You can catch our show streaming live on YouTube at youtube.com/Clutch Talk Sports Radio. And you can also follow us all over social media on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at CT Sports Radio. And you can also visit ClutchTalkSportsRadio.com. That is ClutchTalkSportsRadio.com for everything from the CT Sports Radio live show. My producer, Memphis, thank you all for riding me today on our show as we send you off into the weekend. Again, a lot of tremendous action already taking place this weekend. The Little League World Series taking place out in Williamsport, Pennsylvania, UFC 241 is this weekend, and the main event, Stipe Miocic looks to regain his UFC heavyweight championship of the world versus the GOAT of the heavyweight division, that is, DC Daniel Cormier this weekend. Week 2 of the NFL's preseason is already underway, with games continuing throughout the weekend, including for the Dallas Cowboys, who are actually in Hawaii this weekend. If you want to get in on the conversation, the phone number is 888-444-0570. And it looks like we've got a caller on the line. Caller, what's your name and where are you calling from?
This is KC from Atlanta.
Casey, what's going on, man? How you doing?
I am fine. How you doing there?
Hey, doing well. What you got for us today?
Hey, I'm calling about the Jay-Z situation here.
Okay.
So, me and it's been debateful through the week. Several people that have their takes on Jay-Z signed a deal with the NFL. It's in my head, I'm thinking, okay, let's just wait and see. Is it good for what he's trying to do, or is it for publicity and money? That's what most people are trying to figure out. Mm-hmm. Will he bring some closure to a situation? Will he be able to help with social issues, or is it just a monetary thing? So I say we have to wait and see.
Yeah.
It's all on him.
Yeah, and I appreciate the phone call, Casey. Yeah, it's one of those things like, look, I understand where both sides are coming from, especially if you feel like Colin Kaepernick has been betrayed by Jay-Z, in the sense Jay-Z was the one who supported Colin Kaepernick kneeling. He was the one who also told individuals, look, don't go perform for the NFL as far as the Super Bowl and other events are concerned, out of solidarity with Colin Kaepernick. And then Jay-Z doing what's best for business for him, signing a deal with the NFL to Jamal Hill's point, feeling like Jay-Z is helping in banishing Colin Kaepernick for good out of the NFL, because the NFL will look to a certain sector of fans, will look at the situation and say, look, here, we've placated to your desires to talk about these issues. We even brought in Jay-Z to even deal and be the front man for all of this. So why are you still talking about Colin Kaepernick? And then for a lot of folks, there would be no reason for Colin Kaepernick to be brought in on a football team. So I understand where both sides are coming from here. And one of the things that I think we have to reserve judgment on is that Jay-Z has put himself in a position and in spaces where he's done a lot of things for the black and brown community in this country that cannot be denied. So the benefit of the doubt, I think, is more so on Jay-Z's side just because of his track record. And with that being said, if he is in a position to try and affect change from within, and that is the plan for him, because ultimately we don't know what the plan is for Jay-Z and how he's going to specifically influence what he's trying to do with respect to performances and all of those kinds of things. If there is real change coming about, and on top of that, there's a pathway for Colin Kaepernick to get back into the NFL, and that plays out that way, then this may be something good. But as you mentioned, we may not know ultimately for a while, and it may be best to reserve judgment based on a number of factors and a lot of things we know about Jay-Z at this point.
That's right.
So, but Kesey, I appreciate the phone call. Kesey, tell everybody real quick about where you're at and what you've got going on real quick.
Okay, yeah, I'm in Atlanta. Right now, just getting off work here. So I am. That's pretty much what I'm doing. You know what I mean?
I hear you.
I'm also head of X Squad online radio. So we had a 1-year anniversary, and I'm just happy, man, that I was able to do such a thing. And hey, I just say, man, it's been a wonderful ride. I'll say that.
Well, we are a part of the XY Radio Network. Also, our podcast is available on the XY Radio Network. So if you don't catch it on Sports Radio America, you can also catch it on the X Squad Radio Network. Kesey, I appreciate the phone call, man. Thanks for calling in today.
All right, you got one more second? Got a Falcon rant.
Okay, all right.
Hey, man, we put all this money on these Falcons, and our line is like paper, man. This offensive line looked like tissue paper last night.
Oh, man. It's going to be all right. As long as y'all pay Julio and y'all get things taken care of, y'all going to be all right, man. I think the Falcons got a good chance to make some noise in the NFC South. I love Deion Jones as a linebacker there. I think he's a tremendous player. I think they'll get it figured out. I think they want to get things protected.
They'll get it figured out. There you go. I just had to have my hot take on that.
Yeah, I think they'll get it figured out. Keith, I appreciate the phone call, man.
Talk to you later.
All right. Yeah, it's going to be an interesting season for the Atlanta Falcons. I think they'll figure it out. I've said it before. The NFC South, to me, is probably going to be the most competitive division this year in the NFL. The Falcons, the Panthers, the Saints, and I think Tampa Bay, as Memphis knows, is going to be much better this year. I think Jameis Winston is going to find a revelation with Bruce Arians as his QB whisperer, as obviously being the head coach for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So I think the NFC South is going to be the toughest division in the NFL this year, with those 4 teams in there. Obviously, the New Orleans Saints having a bone to pick with everybody in the NFL, thinking they should have been in the Super Bowl last year after what happened to them in the NFC Championship game. Again, the phone line is 888-444-0570. That's 888-444-0570 if you want to get in on the conversation. Preseason week 2 of the NFL is already underway. The Dallas Cowboys this weekend visit Hawaii. They are playing the Los Angeles. Speaking of the Rams, they're playing the Los Angeles Rams in Hawaii this weekend. Ezekiel Elliott still not in camp. Dak Prescott still hasn't gotten his contract yet. Amari Cooper still hasn't gotten his contract yet. But there is some news out of Cabo, according to Adam Schefter and folks that he's talked to apparently about Zeke. Zeke is down about 10 pounds. So Zeke getting shredded out there in Cabo, and it said that he is going to be ready whenever the contract gets done. Look, Chris Johnson talked about this, CJ2K, if you remember, if you're a Tennessee Titan fan, Queen Berger, which I know you are. CJ2K talked about this earlier this week about football shape versus non-football shape. Look, Ezekiel Elliott, I have no doubt, is taking care of his body. Clearly, he's losing a little bit of weight. He's getting shredded down there in Cabo. Football shape is different than just being in shape. Nothing substitute for the hits in practice. Nothing substitutes for the intensity of practice and obviously getting some game action. Look, Ezekiel Elliott was never going to play in the preseason. That was for sure. He was never going to play in the preseason. No problem there. But the reps that he is not getting, will they take a toll on him? Or will they be something that has affected him going forward? I don't necessarily think so, but a lot of folks tend to think so. I think Ezekiel Elliott will be just fine. Look, Ezekiel Elliott knows how to get his body ready. He knows how to get himself ready for an NFL season. He knows what he has to do to get himself there. And it may take a couple of games, yes, for him to get his legs completely under him. But at the same time, as long as those games are happening between weeks 1 through 17, no problem. As long as he's ready to go and get on the football field, I don't care how long Zeke holds out. As long as he is ready to go by week 1. Yes, I know that it's coming up very soon. September, was it 8th? The season starts across the National Football League with respect to the entire 32 NFL teams. So we will see if Zeke is on the field. I am interested to see, though, obviously, in preseason game number 2 for the Dallas Cowboys, how they continue to move forward offensively with the running backs that are there. Tony Pollard looked pretty good in his first preseason game for the Dallas Cowboys. Mike Weber didn't look too good, looked okay. But at the same time, that is the obviously position of concern, namely for the Dallas Cowboys. Yes, they're dealing with a little bit of injury issues with a guy in Zach Martin. I think he'll be ultimately fine for the Dallas Cowboys when the season starts, as long as he's ready for week 1. No problem. Chill out. Rest. No big deal. Travis Frederick, coming back from his Guillain-Barré syndrome, looks really good in training camp for the Dallas Cowboys. They are getting themselves rounded into form. And yes, the contract situations for Zeke, for Dak, for Amari continue to be issues of concern for the Cowboys, but ultimately Jerry will get it figured out, and the Cowboys will be able to get these guys into camp and, more importantly, onto the field when week 1 starts. Conversely, for the Los Angeles Rams, look, Ty Gurley's got to acknowledge that arthritic knee that he's got, man. And I know the Rams are paying him a bunch of money, and I know that he is still one of the best running backs in the NFL, but my goodness, that knee is going to be an issue for him this season if he is not consistently healthy for them. They're going to use him a lot this year. They saw what happened in the Super Bowl. They didn't get him involved as much in the game plan. Sean McVay outthinking himself against a guy and Bill Belichick in that Super Bowl. So I'm really interested to see how this matchup plays out. Obviously, you look for things for the second and third units, especially in the second preseason game. The third game is when you really get to see how these teams are looking and what these starters are looking like. But for the Dallas Cowboys, look, man, this is an important time for them. No Zeke. We're going to find out about Tony Pollard. We're going to find out about Mike Webb. We're going to find out what these Dallas Cowboys have with other skilled positions where guys are trying to compete for jobs. So we will see how this goes. But look, week 2 of preseason NFL action. You got some pretty good matchups this weekend. I know Memphis is going to be paying particular attention to his Pittsburgh Steelers. Let me get your quick thought, Memphis. How have you felt about the Steelers so far in camp now that we're going about to be in 2 weeks into the preseason now?
I mean, there are a couple of guys that I got to actually cover a little bit over my career, including one Benny Snell. Benny Snell's looking really good back there. We needed another running back back there just to make sure that we had enough. And Benny Snell's one of those type of guys. He's hard to tackle, and it looks like he's going to be a productive member of this team. Also, a guy that I don't really know that well, but I remember talking to him, and I remember at one point in time, I wasn't a big fan of Josh Dobbs. Mm-hmm. But after watching him for a little while, and I remember actually sitting down and we talked to him while we were in Fort Worth. And I said, man, I wasn't your biggest fan, but, now I feel a little bit more comfortable with you being, the heir apparent to Ben Roethlisberger. And I know it took him, I know that type of honesty probably took him back a little bit, but, I was like, I wasn't that big, I wasn't that big of a fan. But after watching him and after watching his fundamentals and his technique and everything else, I think that if Ben goes down, I think we have a quarterback that can go out there and win some games, because we all know Ben's probably going to go down at least for 1 or 2 games. It almost happens every year like clockwork. So, but that's the difference between making the playoffs and not, is whether or not you're going to win those 1 or 2 games that Ben is out. And I think we got a quarterback that can do that. So I'm cautiously optimistic about what I see from the Steelers this year. Cautiously optimistic that they may actually win the AFC North again. But my man Lamar Jackson in Baltimore, that's a little scary to me. Yeah, it's a little scary.
Good luck with that. Yeah, the Steelers this weekend take on Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs in preseason week 2 of NFL action. Again, this is a pivotal week as far as the NFL is concerned, with what has broken as far as the news with Jay-Z and the NFL. The NFL looking to move forward in a 100th anniversary season Preseason week number 2 of the NFL has already gotten underway. The Dallas Cowboys take on the Los Angeles Rams Saturday night out in Hawaii. And then the Cowboys return home to play against the Houston Texans in this preseason. So looking forward to the Dallas Cowboys getting here for their first preseason game next week. Thank you to our guests who joined us on the Clutch Talk Sports Radio live show today. My man Ryan Talbot of Bills Updates, good enough to join us on the Clutch Talk Sports Radio live show, and also Jamal Murphy of ESPN's The Undefeated and co-host of the Bill Roden on Sports podcast. If you didn't catch anything live with us, please download and subscribe to our free podcast available on Apple Podcasts, anywhere you get your podcasts for free. And please subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you watched our show live on YouTube, we will have clips of today's show available